What if the person who saved your life suddenly vanished without saying goodbye? And what if the one whisper that saved you still haunted you? Not because of what it revealed, but because of who said it. Richard thought the danger was over, the betrayal exposed. But as doubt crept in and the woman who saved him disappeared, he began to wonder. Had he escaped one trap only to walk into another? Stay with us, because in the final chapter of this story, a single letter, a chance encounter, and one question will change everything. And what happens at the end, no one saw coming. It was supposed to be the biggest moment of Richard Walker's life. From candy-selling teenager on Nashville buses to the top floor of a Chicago skyscraper, Richard had built Walker Innovations with nothing but grit, charm, and a stubborn refusal to quit. And now, after months of negotiations, he was poised to merge with Whitman Global, a deal that would triple his fortune and cement his name among the titans of American tech. He adjusted his cufflinks, took a deep breath, and lowered his Mont-Blanc pen toward the dotted line. Then a whisper, barely audible, sliced through the boardroom air. "Don't sign. It's a trap." He froze. Slowly, Richard turned his head. A woman in a janitor's uniform, dark gray polo, faded khakis, was leaning slightly over the table, pretending to clean a fingerprint off the polished surface. She kept her eyes on the table, but her voice, trembling and razor-sharp, had already struck its target. Then she was gone. Just like that. Vanished through the side door before anyone noticed. "Mr. Walker," said Robert Whitman, the elegantly aged CEO of Whitman Global, tapping his manicured nails against the conference table. "Is there a problem?" 6 months of talks, added Daniel Carter, Richard's COO and childhood best friend, flashing the familiar grin that once got them out of detention and into investor meetings. "We're ready, man. Everything we ever dreamed of. Let's close this." Richard's fingers twitched. His gaze shifted between the signature line and Daniel. Something wasn't right. The woman's whisper replayed in his head like a warning siren he couldn't shut off. "It's a trap." But a trap for what? He forced a smile, tapped a random section of the contract. "Just a small paragraph I want to review before signing. Mind giving me 5 minutes?" Whitman narrowed his eyes. "This is a take-it-or-leave-it offer, Mr. Walker. I won't take long." Daniel stood up too. "Want me to go over it with you?" "No," Richard said quickly. "Alone." Without waiting for a reply, he left the room. His heart was hammering against his ribs, but his mind was laser-focused. As he stepped into the hallway, he caught a glimpse of movement. The woman in the uniform was waiting near a service corridor. She gave a quick nod and slipped into a small storage room. Richard hesitated for just a second, then followed her in. The door clicked shut behind him. The hum of overhead lights buzzed like tension in his ears. "I'm Grace Miller," the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I clean offices in this building at night. You don't know me, but I've worked here for months. I've seen and heard things I shouldn't have." "Like what?" Richard asked. "Like Daniel Carter and Robert Whitman planning to destroy you." His laugh was short and cold. "That's impossible." "I know how it sounds," she said, eyes wide and pleading. "But the merger is a setup. Whitman Global is bankrupt. Once you sign, the debts become yours. They walk free. You lose everything." Richard's skin chilled. "That's a bold accusation. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't sure." Grace fished out her phone and opened a folder. "Here. Screenshots of their emails. Audio recordings. Even bank transfers. I've got it all." Richard scanned the screen. "Let Walker sign. He's too arrogant to suspect anything. Once it's done, all liabilities are on him. In 6 months, we're free. He'll be ruined." Every word landed like a knife to the gut. "No," he whispered, eyes still on the screen. "Daniel, he wouldn't. He couldn't do this." "He already has," Grace said. "I overheard them 3 nights ago. They didn't know I was there. I've been recording everything since." Richard felt as though the floor beneath him was shifting. He clutched the wall. "I don't understand," he said. "Why are you telling me this? You risk your job for me?" Her jaw tightened. "My father trusted the wrong people. He lost everything. We lost our home. He died working 2 jobs trying to pay off debts that weren't his. I've seen what men like Whitman do to people like you when you stop being useful." Her eyes locked onto his. "I couldn't stay quiet. Even if I lose everything too." Silence settled over the tiny room. In Grace's eyes, Richard didn't see calculation. He saw conviction. Raw, trembling courage. Suddenly, memories rushed in. Missed red flags. Strange inconsistencies. Bad luck. Business deals sabotaged last minute. Things he had dismissed, because Daniel had always been there with a perfect excuse. Now it all made sense. Richard stepped back, inhaled deeply, and looked Grace in the eye. "Show me everything," he said. Grace handed him her phone. As he studied the files, Daniel's voice echoed from a recent recording. "He's smart, but not that smart. He trusts me too much. We'll crush him before he even knows he's bleeding." Richard's stomach turned. His best friend. His brother. The betrayal wasn't just business. It was personal. And now he had a decision to make. Would you stop everything if a stranger whispered to you during a major moment? Yes. The door to the boardroom closed behind him with a soft click, but the pressure in Richard's chest felt like thunder. He had the evidence. He had the truth. But what he didn't have yet was the full extent of the betrayal, or the perfect way to strike back. Grace was still beside him, her phone trembling in her hand, as he scrolled through damning emails, secret recordings, and financial documents. Every swipe revealed more of the plan. How Daniel and Robert Whitman had engineered the entire merger to offload a failing corporation's debt onto him. And how, after building his company from scratch, Richard would be left with nothing. His oldest friend had been crafting this for years. He looked up at Grace. Her face pale. Her jaw set. "You understand, if they find out what you've done, your life changes too." She nodded. "It already has." Richard studied her for a moment. Then something shifted in his eyes, calm, cold, strategic. "Then we'll make sure this ends on our terms." Back in the main boardroom, Robert was sipping an espresso, Daniel spinning a pen between his fingers with easy confidence. Neither of them suspected the firestorm that was about to come down on them. Richard re-entered the room alone, expression unreadable. "Took you long enough," Daniel said with a laugh. "You good?" Richard smiled faintly. "Better than ever." He took his seat, picked up the pen again, and let it hover over the signature line. "I just want to say," Richard began, his tone calm but low, "this deal, it means everything to me. To my company. To my legacy." Whitman nodded with an almost patronizing smile. "Of course it does." Richard's pen lowered, then paused. "Which is why," he said smoothly, "I decided to do some extra due diligence." Daniel's smile faltered. "What?" "I did some digging," Richard continued. "Last minute, I know, but you'll understand why." He pulled a remote from his pocket and clicked it. The massive wall screen behind them flickered to life. The first image appeared. An internal financial report from Whitman Global showing losses, hundreds of millions in debt hidden behind shell accounts. Whitman straightened in his seat. Before either man could speak, Richard tapped again. The screen now displayed an email exchange, time-stamped, authenticated, between Daniel and Whitman. Planning the merger. Laying out the trap. Laughing at how easy it would be to fool Richard. Daniel's voice cracked. "Where did you get that?" "Oh, we're just getting started," Richard said coolly. The screen now played an audio recording. Daniel's voice. "Once he signs, it's all his. He's too blinded by loyalty to see it coming." Silence. Cold, heavy, explosive. "Daniel?" Whitman hissed. Richard turned to his best friend. "How long, Dan? How long were you planning to burn everything we built?" Daniel stood up, suddenly pale. "You don't understand. This isn't what it looks like." "It looks like betrayal," Richard said. "And it sounds like conspiracy." Whitman rose as well. "I think this is outrageous. You can't just—" "Sit down," Richard said, his voice slicing the air. Security, waiting discreetly outside, stepped into view. And yet Daniel didn't run. Instead, he laughed, a slow, bitter laugh that twisted into something hollow. "You always got everything, Richard," he said, shaking his head. "You were the golden boy. The investors. The press. The glory. It all followed you. I was the one in the background. Always the helper. Always the best friend. I made this company run. I sacrificed everything while you soaked up the credit." Richard didn't respond. He just watched. "You want the truth?" Daniel sneered. "Yes, I helped to set this up. And I don't regret it. Because for once, I was going to come out on top." The room was silent. The betrayal now had a face. And it was heartbreakingly familiar. "I treated you like a brother," Richard said quietly. "I trusted you with everything." "You were naive," Daniel replied. "You thought loyalty was armor. But in business, it's a liability." Robert Whitman tried to step away, but Richard blocked him. "And you? Your company is a sinking ship. You thought I wouldn't find out." "I'll have my lawyers on this," Whitman started. "They already have copies of everything," Richard interrupted. So does the Department of Justice. And the SEC. Whitman's face drained of color. Security advanced. Whitman didn't resist. But Daniel just stood there, staring at Richard with something between hatred and grief. You'll never know if this was the only betrayal, he said coldly. How do you know that cleaning lady didn't play you too? Ever wonder how she got all this? Richard's jaw clenched. Miguel's? No. Daniel's words hit like a final blow. And they were meant to plant a seed of doubt. Even as security led them out. Even as Richard stood victorious. Part of him heard the whisper of uncertainty. Had Grace really just wanted to help? Or had she been part of something bigger? Back in his private office, Grace was waiting. You did it, she said softly. But he didn't respond right away. He was staring at her with an intensity that made her nervous. What's wrong? I need to ask you something, Richard said, stepping closer. When did you really decide to help me? Was it that day in the boardroom, or much earlier? Grace blinked. I don't understand. I just want to know if I was a mission, or a man who got lucky. Her eyes filled with tears. Not from guilt, but from a wound deeper than suspicion. I risked everything to help you, she whispered. And I'd do it again. Richard's expression softened. But the doubt was there now, planted, growing. That night, he couldn't sleep. Even in victory, one question haunted him. Was the whisper that saved him ever truly meant for his good? Now here's the question for you, the viewer. Do you believe Grace was telling the truth from the beginning? Or do you think there's still something she hasn't revealed? Yes or no? Richard watched the night spill over the city skyline like spilled ink across glass. Chicago buzzed below his penthouse office, alive with light and movement. But inside his chest, it was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel and Whitman had been taken into custody earlier that day. And the headlines were already rolling in. Tech billionaire exposes fraud in $2.3 billion merger scandal. But the victory felt hollow. He hadn't seen Grace since the confrontation. She'd quietly left the building while the chaos unfolded, slipping away without a word. And yet, her voice echoed louder than anyone's. He had her phone still, the one she used to gather all the evidence. Every file was intact. Every recording time-stamped. Nothing altered. No hidden motives. No secret communications. Nothing to suggest she was part of anything more than what she claimed. But the seed of doubt Daniel had planted refused to die. He tried to go home. He tried to rest. But at 2:17 a.m., Richard found himself back in that storage room where it all began. As if the walls themselves could explain why he couldn't forget the way Grace had looked at him after his question. Betrayal doesn't always come from lies. Sometimes it comes from the mere act of doubt. The next morning, he walked into the building and asked the front desk for Grace Miller. She doesn't work here anymore, the receptionist said with a faint frown. She left a resignation note. Said she was moving out of the city. Richard stood there for a full minute, not blinking. That night, he drove to every cleaning agency in the county. No one had her on file. The phone number she used was disconnected. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. But then, a week later, a letter arrived. It was handwritten. No return address. But the moment he saw the familiar script, he knew. Richard, you were never a mission, and you were never a fool. You just trusted too easily because the world hasn't beaten it out of you yet. That's rare. Keep it. I left because I realized something. No matter how honest I was, I'd always carry the weight of where I come from. I didn't want to be a reminder of your worst moment, and I didn't want your kindness to feel like guilt. But please know this, I believed in you. Still do. And I'll never forget the day you looked me in the eye and trusted me when you didn't have to. Grace. He read it once. Then again. Then he folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the top drawer of his desk. The weeks passed. Daniel was convicted of fraud and conspiracy. Whitman lost everything and took a plea deal to avoid prison, though his reputation was ruined beyond repair. Richard took a short leave from the company, needing time to think, to breathe, to process. He began investing in small businesses, focusing on rebuilding trust, not just in others, but in himself. 3 months later, while attending a business innovation conference in Boston, he wandered into a networking session he almost skipped. And that's when he saw her. Grace was standing near a booth for minority-owned startups, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. A name tag that read, Grace Miller, founder, ClearPath Services. She looked different, confident, sharper, but still Grace. Still the woman who had whispered the truth when no one else dared. She saw him. Froze. Then he smiled. She didn't run. They didn't say anything for a long time. Just looked at each other. Then finally she whispered, "You tracked me down." He shook his head. "I didn't. I just kept walking forward. You were the one who stopped disappearing." They stepped outside into the Boston breeze, where the city was softer than Chicago and the noise was gentler. "You've done well," he said. "I'm still building," she replied. "My sister's about to graduate med school, and I finally got a place of my own. It's small, but mine. You still cleaning?" "No," she said with a smile. "I'm running a team of 20. He nodded. "You were right, by the way." She raised an eyebrow. "Trust isn't a liability. It's a risk worth taking." They sat on a park bench. Grace stared ahead at the cobblestone path. "I never stopped thinking about that day," she said. "But I had to leave. I was scared if I stayed, you'd see me only as the person who saved you, not someone you'd choose on your own." "I didn't choose to be saved," he replied quietly. "I chose to believe you." She looked at him then, eyes searching. "Do you still?" "Yes," he said. "Every day since." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. "I kept something," he said. "Something I was going to throw away after the merger fell through. But then I thought, maybe I'd find a better use for it." She hesitated. "What is it?" He opened the box. Inside was a small silver pendant. On it, engraved in tiny, delicate script, were 2 words. "You matter." "I was going to give this to my employees after the deal," he said. "But none of them risked what you did. None of them reminded me who I was." She touched the pendant like it might burn her. "You don't owe me anything, Richard." He looked her straight in the eyes. "Maybe not, but I still want to build something with you. Not a company. Not a project. Something real." Grace's hands trembled as she held the pendant. "What if it doesn't work?" "Then we try again," he said. "And again until it does. That's what trust looks like." For the first time in a long time, her smile wasn't guarded. "I've already started trusting you," she said. "I think that's why I came to this conference. Some part of me hoped I'd run into you." They didn't kiss. They didn't rush. But something in the air changed, soft and clear. A kind of beginning that doesn't need grand gestures to be real. Over the next year, Grace's company grew. Richard became her silent partner, not because she needed him, but because he believed in her vision. They shared mornings, ideas, and eventually a home. The letter she wrote stayed in his drawer, until one day she found it and replaced it with a new one, starting with the words, "This is no longer goodbye. This is the start." And when Richard was asked in a late-night television interview how he survived one of the biggest betrayals in the corporate world, he didn't mention lawyers, or lawsuits, or strategy. He said, "Someone I barely knew told me to trust them, and I did. That changed everything." Now let me ask you, viewer, do you think trust is still worth the risk in a world full of betrayal? If this story moved you, comment below and tell us what country you're watching from. We'd love to know how you felt about Richard and Grace's journey, and if you believe second chances are real. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with someone who still believes in doing the right thing, even when it's hard.